Word to the wise. If you thinking about letting a friend move in with you, don't. Story time. Y'all already know what time it is. Did y'all miss me or what? I missed you too. Now let's just hop straight into the story, okay? Now, just for a little bit of context, I got to give y'all just a little bit of history about me before getting into the actual reading, so it makes sense. So, I bought my house when I was 21. I'm now 26. When I bought my house, it was 2020, end of September. At the time, I was dealing with this dude, and of course, I didn't know, but I was in for a hell of a fucking ride. That being said, I know the ins and outs of a very toxic domestic violence type of situation relationship, right? Very experienced with it. I dated him on and off for about 5 years. Now, at the time, it was just the beginning. So I had no idea what I was in for real. All of that being said, let's get into the story. For the sake of the story, we're going to call her Tiffany. Now, I met Tiffany around 2020. Tiffany is an esthetician. Now, one thing about it, I'm going to support a black business down. And then you a woman too? Yeah, so don't even worry about it. I'm there. On top of that, Tiffany came in clutch. Nobody else was open. At the time, I was going to this chain wax place called, I think it's like Andrea or Wax by Andrea, something like that. So to go from a chain place to an individual person, and then she charging really good prices. Yeah, and she was having my shit. Like when I first went to her from them, I had like little ingrown hairs, discoloration, and to be completely honest, she got me the fuck together. Smooth baby bottom, no more discoloration, all of that. I was fucking with Tiffany, period. Kept the punani cute. Now, being that me and her started off as esty besties or whatever, we ended up developing a friendship, you know? Now, Tiffany didn't know me like that, and I didn't know Tiffany like that. But naturally, you know, somebody all in your no square, you're gonna start talking about stuff. I mean, you already in my business. I might as well give you a little bit of insight, you know. So, you know, years go by, and now me and Tiffany have been friends for 5 years. Now, Tiffany was always really confused. She loved me. She loved my vibe. I was always very blunt. You know, she was also one of those type of people that was like a rooter. Like, she was always going to be rooting for you, regardless of what you were doing. Also, when I met Tiffany, I was in my dance bag heavy. I'm not going to call it no midnight ballerina, bitch. I was a stripper. Yes, because I'm tired of y'all sugarcoating shit. So one thing Tiffany would notice is that I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't hang around a lot of people. And the friends that I did have, I was very protective of them because at the time I thought they were my friends. But as the story go, you know, them hoes really wasn't my friends. And Tiffany would start to see that. And obviously she only had my side of the story to go off of, but I feel like she put two and two together. She liked my vibe. She started to get to know me. So I feel like she started to see certain things, put two and two together, and was like, yeah, you're not tripping, you know? Needless to say, Tiffany was there for a good chunk of friends, you know, exiting out my motherfucking life. And it was actually an incident with her and a friend of mine. We went to this spa that she invited us to, and everything was really cool, good vibes. My friend at the time, well, the bitch ain't my friend, but she was at the time. She was an Aries. Tiffany is a Cancer. I'm a Virgo. So they kind of butted heads a little bit. And at the time, Tiffany had said something to the friend that I was not fucking with. Because one thing about it, you have certain friends for certain things. And that bitch, I already was feeling like I couldn't tell her my business. So clearly, even though me and the other girl had been friends longer, I trusted Tiffany a lot more. Now, being that that was our first incident, I'm not gonna lie, I just slick cut her ass off. I didn't even tell her that I was irritated with her. Yeah, I was pissed, because, bitch, you got me fucked up. Just because I tell you something don't mean that you just open your mouth and say something to somebody else. Now, granted, this was her first incident with me. She didn't even know I was mad. She just so happened to call me, y'all, asking about her engagement ring. And I'm like, you calling me about a ring? And she's like, oh my God, what's going on? Now, she is older than me, right? By like maybe 7 or 8 years. So when I told her the issue and what had happened and how I felt, it was literally like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She took accountability. You know, I hate that I made you feel that way. I'm calling you about a ring. I don't even know there's anything going on. And I love that response, right? Because I'm used to bitches trying to try me like I'm tripping. And, you know, to have somebody to take accountability, look in the mirror, apologize, even if she may not have felt like she was wrong in the situation, that was a breath of fresh air to me. So not only did that solidify our friendship and make it a stronger bond, a bitch. At that point, I'm like, yeah, okay, me and Tiffany, like, we may actually have something real going on here. After that, me and Tiffany never really had any, you know, words or nothing like that ever happened again, right? So boom. I'm fast forwarding. Years have gone by. Now I'm no longer fucking with that other friend. Tiffany is now fully aware of who I am as a person. She knows my heart. She knows that I read cards, I'm psychic, and all of these things, right? We've gotten to know each other. Now, going back a little bit, when I met Tiffany, she was living with her boyfriend. At the time, he was not her fiance yet. But I got to know him, I got to know her, and you know, they started inviting me places. We go to KOD together. I actually just threw away the picture that we had. I had a picture in my house of me and Tiffany at KOD. You know, it was fun vibes. Like, I never had to worry about Tiffany. So, you know, we moved further along. Her then boyfriend asked her to marry him. And bitch, we're there for that because there is not enough of that going on. So, of course, I was over the moon for her, period. Everything starts to kind of take a turn, though, right? Now, a lot of things are happening in Tiffany's relationship that I'm not very much privy to, but Tiffany at this point knows that I'm with this guy. Things have been physical. It's a toxic situation. He was fucking around with his baby mama. It was a lot going on. So eventually, you know, Tiffany starts to open up about her and her boyfriend or her fiance at the time. We're just gonna call him Rodney. Now, I loved Rodney and Tiffany's relationship because they had been together like 10 plus years. But again, I wasn't privy to everything. So once shit starts hitting the fan, they're getting ready to get married. They both go on their own individual bachelor and bachelorette parties. They had been arguing for a while because Rodney told Tiffany he was going to Colombia. And if you know anything about anything, you know what be going down in Colombia. Okay? They be giving it out. Don't know what they doing. They're just giving it out. And he was ready to purchase. Now, y'all know how man is. You know, she's basically accusing him like, I know what you going down there for. Oh, and he's telling her, you tripping, this, that, and the third. It even got to the point where he got in her face, headbutts her, calls her a bitch. You know what I mean? And he's really going big for somebody who's not going to go out there and do anything nuts, you know. Because if you know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to go do nothing out there, why are you getting so disrespectful? So now I'm privy to the situation. This is like 3 years into our friendship at this point, right? I'm privy to the situation. I don't fucking like Rodney at this point. But I have to play my cards right because until my girl Tiffany leave this nigga, it's not much I can really do. I can't say that I don't like him, create a wedge between me and Tiffany because he's not going to want her to hang out with me. Now, to be completely honest, he's a Leo. So he always was worried about people's opinion and how he showed up to people. He didn't give a fuck about who he truly was. He just didn't want nobody else to know. So boom, he goes to Colombia, comes back. This stupid motherfucker, he has a camera, not his phone, y'all, a camera. Tiffany, long story short, finds a video of him and some Colombian chick, and y'all already know what's going on. This fool done recorded it. Why? So boom, their relationship is starting to get very, very physical. Mentally, physically, emotionally, verbally, it's just starting to get crazy. Now, I told Tiffany because she's seen me go through my stuff, right? I got pregnant, I had a miscarriage. There was a lot going on in that relationship with me. So she felt comfortable coming to me, telling me what was going on with her. So I told Tiffany, like, you know, if anything ever happened, because it was starting to get scary. It was starting to get to a point where, you know, I'm trying to pull up on her because I feel like he's getting ready to do something to her. I'm like, you could just come live with me. I don't do that. I don't care if you my cousin, okay? I just don't like people living with me, especially if they're in situations like that, because I know how it is when you're not ready to leave. And you're not going to put my motherfucking life in danger because you want to play, okay? But if y'all want to hear the rest of this story, tap in and come back for part 2. Comment down below. Stop everything crazy and trouble. She about ready to beat my ass, so I'm back with that part 2. All right, y'all, we're going to have to go back a little bit because I skipped certain parts because I thought I was going to be able to keep everything in part 1, but it wouldn't be me if I didn't do a part 2, so fuck it. We kind of going to go back a little bit, right? This is like the first year, maybe a year and a half into us being friends / me being her client, Esty Bestie, you know the drill. She asked me to be a brand ambassador for her business, in which I replied, yes. I had the following, I had the backing, I had the personality. On top of that, I was doing music videos, club hostings. I was just really in my bag, so why not? And of course, it was not abnormal for people to ask me to be the brand ambassador because of everything that I already talked about. This was just a little bit different. She didn't give me any contract. We was just basically going off face card and the fact that we were building this new relationship. And on top of that, I was always posting her prior to, because that's just what I do. If you give me a good experience, I'm going to give you a review and I'm going to be honest about it. You know what I mean? So it was nothing. Now, her proposition was, again, a little different from the real brand ambassador gigs that I was getting, because usually, especially around that time, I was doing a lot of wig things. So people would send me free products to promote. Hers was a little different, right? She wanted me to promote her business and she would give me mostly like a discounted prorated type of service, or the amount that I would be paying. So she would charge me $50 and I would basically be doing her brand ambassador stuff. Now, again, there was no contract in place. But me being a real bitch, I'm going to do what the fuck I'm supposed to do regardless. You don't have to tell me. Now, she also started doing creative stuff. Now, this is kind of fast forwarding, right? She started doing creative stuff with her business. She's making rap songs. She made a song out of one of Glorilla's songs, basically promoting her business. I couldn't be there for the music video, but I was there for her to record. And my voice is even in the song on the call, like, hey, Tiffany, I need a wax right now. Book me. You know what I mean? Like, really doing my shit. Mind you, I never asked her to be her brand ambassador. I never asked her for free shit. I never asked her for any discounts. I never asked her for shit. Okay? Notable mention, when I went to her, her prices were already in that $50, $60 range. So it's not even to say that she was giving me a true discount. It's more so like when she did up her prices, my price point stayed the same. So keep that in mind. Now we're going to fast forward. When Tiffany originally moved in my house, I'm very thorough. Bitch, I had a whole contract, a whole contract, bitch, about my house and about living in my house, which obviously consisted of, rent, when rent was due, how late it could be, if it was going to be late, the time frame. I even gave her until September. So technically, she would have been in my house from late February, March into September if she would have stayed that long. Now, I didn't have a lot of rules, but one thing about it, me being a psychic, me being extremely empathic, and just me being private, people can't come to my motherfucking house. I don't even really have company at my motherfucking house. I have to know you. We have to have that bond. You know what I mean? And that's not too much of an ask, right? But the more we go along with stuff, I'm starting to peep certain things that, okay, I need to also tell her I don't like this. Now, don't get me wrong. Tiffany, I would get off work. She done cooked, cleaned up. She was actually a really good guest. Outside of just little things that I'm about to get into, right? So it was like, okay, this is really fun. I get off work, we can talk, we can chop it up. It seemed like, and I don't have no sisters. I was starting to enjoy it. Now, it was certain things that I would start to notice. Like, when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to smell weed. It don't make me feel good. It actually makes me feel nauseous. And honestly, as a girl, why the fuck are you smoking at 8 o'clock in the motherfucking morning? That's a boy thing. That's what niggas do. And any nigga at my house or any man around me, period, that's not even gonna fly, period. So it was like one of those things where I wouldn't know that it would bother me until it happened. So obviously I'm not going to put that in the rental agreement. But I did shoot her a little text like, hey, I don't like the smell of weed in the morning. I'm getting ready to go to work type thing. I don't want to smell like weed. And it was nothing. Like, she apologized, basically said that, she picked up that habit from her ex, this, that, and the third, the fiance. And so it was like, okay, I get it. You're unlearning the toxic. And then one day I rolled me up like a little spliff. And I do this thing where I'll hit it and then, in the morning, leave it there for when I get off work. And I know for a fact, it was probably about maybe like this big, okay? But to my 420 people, you get off work, you looking forward to that, period. I strategically put it in a space in my room right by my TV. So it's not like I was hiding it, because at this point I wasn't closing my doors. I wasn't locking my doors, because at the end of the day, it's just us two in this bitch. So if anything go missing, I know I ain't do it. You know what I mean? I get off work, I come home, and it's not there. And I'm looking for this shit, because before I ask somebody or even accuse somebody of doing something, I'm very thorough. I'm a thorough ass bitch. I'm going to look for that shit. I'm going to make sure I'm not tripping. I'm going to even evaluate, did I smoke the whole thing? But I know I'm not tripping. So I shoot her a text like, hey, did you so happen to smoke my clip? She hits me back like, no, what's going on? And I'm like, I can't find it. So boom, she ends up calling me like maybe 5 minutes later. Like, hey, what's the problem? What's going on? I'm like, I left a clip here. It's not here. I'm just trying to see if you smoked it. If you did, just let me know. Because if so, please don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, if you gonna do it, replace it. You know what I'm saying? And so she assured me that she didn't do it. I have no proof. I know what the fuck I know. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Just gonna roll up another blunt. Now, this is kind of what confirmed my suspicions that she actually did smoke it. Later on that night when she finally got back home, she was like, oh, I'm going to call the weed man, this, that, and the third. I'm going to get you like a little 3, 5, or a 7. And I was like, okay, you know, but I'm thinking like she's going to get some weed for herself and then roll up and we just going to hit it. No, when she got the weed, she gave it to me and I was like, oh, okay. Like, you know, she was like, no, that's yours. That's yours. I was like, well, how much is it? She was like, you don't got to worry about that. So I was like, okay. But you know what you know. So I'm thinking like, okay. But bygones be bygones. It's not that big of a deal. It is what it is. Also, keep in mind, when she moved into my house, I had literally just made my TikTok. Y'all, my TikTok is not even a year old yet. It'll be a year old in March. And when I made my TikTok, I was talking all about, you know, women and how we should be utilizing these men in the best way that we can, especially if you look good, you got everything going for yourself. Don't let these men take care of you. You don't take care of a man. And I'm basically giving women advice about how to get theirs and not waste their time. Now, I'm not sure if some of the things that I was saying was hitting her or making her feel some type of way, but it definitely, that was not the intention, because again, I was in a relationship where I allowed a man to take me off focus and he wasn't doing shit from doo-doo to help me. You know what I mean? So it's one of those empowering things, stripper mindset, you know, type thing like that. And also being independent and taking care of myself. I'm giving this advice to anybody who's gonna catch it. Now, I also started noticing like her being sneaky or lying. I don't know who the fuck y'all think y'all is, but you can't really have a lot of privacy when you live with somebody, no matter how much you try to keep things secret, you know? And also, I truly don't give a fuck. But when it come down to my house, my space, my sanctuary, I'm always gonna give a fuck. So one day she told me that this dude was gonna get her a rental or give her one of his cars. So I'm like, okay, cool. And I just so happened to be kind of coming in and out the house when she pulls up. Why this bitch park all the way down the street? Not too far, but not in a spot right in front of my house where she could have parked. And I'm just so happen to come outside and I see the car and I'm like, I thought you said you was getting a rental. She was like, oh, you know, Rodney, he's out of town. And Rodney did buy her the car. And Rodney is the type of nigga, if I feed you, I'm going to starve you. So everything he ever bought her, phone, car, anything, that was his until she was his again. So I'm like, I thought you was gonna get another car. Oh, he's out of town. My mom talked to him and I was able to get the car. Bitch, that's a red flag. Because let me tell you something about my motherfucking safety. It's not even about you or me wanting to know your motherfucking business. I have to do it part 3. Oh my God. Comment for part 3.
What up, though? Come sit down with your cousin and hear the spooky story. Come on. I would just like to say that this is not my story. This is someone else's story. And if you would like to send a story to me, you can do so by sending it to my email. Okay? So this man says that bad things have always happened to his family. He said no matter what year, no matter what cousin, no matter what auntie, uncle, bad things have just always happened in their family. He said he did notice when he was younger, he really didn't have any other children to play with because all the other cousins passed away in childhood and adolescent, you know, and he said when he became an adult, he started asking questions like, you know, what happened to them? Nobody wanted to give him an explanation. Nobody wanted to talk about it. They changed the subject or glazed over it. So fast forward, he was talking to his aunt one day and she pretty much brought up, okay, you remember how we told you about, you know, such and such made a deal with the devil. He just ha-ha'd it off like, right, yeah, y'all told me that years and years ago, our great made a deal with the devil. I'm not buying that. Like, what happened to them? Was there some kind of illness? Now, I would just like to throw in, he did want to put emphasis on the fact that he did not believe in heaven or hell or God or anything. He said that everything to him had an explanation back then. Fast forward, he said he went to go visit the family land. There is some family that lives on their land, but he just went to visit. But when he went to go visit, he went to visit the cemetery area. Any child or family member that passed away in adolescence or childhood, they're buried here on this land. And so he said when he went to the cemetery, there was a man sitting there on the grass, super nice looking guy. He says it was weird how nice looking this man was. Fast forward, he ended up leaving the guy. You know, after they walked around and talked, he thought he was some kind of family member he had never met before, because there are family members he never met. He gets to the main house, and when he gets there, he's talking to his older cousin, and his cousin is just like, what man? I want to throw in that he is married, and he and his wife were trying to have a child back then. And he said that one day his aunt showed up to his home. They had a family dinner. His aunt showed up to his home with that man that was at the cemetery. Everybody asked the aunt questions like, where does he live? Have you been to his home before? Who is he? Why is he so much younger than you? The aunt is in her 60s. He appears to be in his late 30s, early 40s. So he says eventually all the guys split up from the women. The women, they go in and do their thing. The men are outside doing their thing. And he says that him and the guy, the oddly attractive guy, venture off and are speaking. And the guy tells him, he says, so I heard you're trying for a baby. So he told the guy, like, yeah, it's been really hard. We've been trying for years. And he said, it's going to happen. But when it does, it's mine. Do y'all know I would have shat myself if somebody said that to me? Fast forward, he's pissed off because he's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's yours. And so the man, he said, smiled at him. He said the man wasn't fazed that he was yelling. The man just sat there and was calm and collected. Fast forward a couple weeks past, he sees his other aunt and she tells him, you know who that was, right? And he goes, no. She was like, that was the devil. Now, I do want to add in that, a while ago, I remember being in church, and I remember my pastor said that the devil was not this ugly, super dark human. Like, he was ugly on the inside and terrible, right? But he appeared beautiful. And I remember my pastor was like, don't forget that he's a fallen angel. Angels are beautiful. He said, so beautiful we can't look at him. That's crazy. Anyway, fast forward, he said a few years later, he and his wife ended up having a beautiful baby girl. But he said not even 2 years after, the baby passed away. And I am really, really sorry that your baby passed away. Now, this is where it gets crazy. He said while his wife was giving birth, he's in the room. All the doctors rush in. They're trying to get the baby out. And there were some complications. But he said in the middle of all that chaos, he could see the man that his aunt called the devil standing in the corner of the room. Like, just standing there. Nobody was paying attention to him. Nobody saw him. He was the only one that saw the devil standing right there. He said he remembered after they had their baby and they left the hospital, he saw him often. He would see him while he was out. He would see him while he was driving. He said it was the weirdest thing ever. He would see him everywhere. And he said that's when he started to believe, oh my God, what if there is a heaven and hell? What if he is really the devil? Now, he said his aunt, it's almost like she knew the most out of everyone. She said that over the years, she's seen him and he looks the exact same. He has not aged. She said that they even take pictures when he's around. He's dated multiple women in the family and he's never in any of the pictures. But y'all, that's nuts. That's insane. That's scary. He said he actually has another story and I can't wait for him to send it because that's trippy.
Buckle in, my little creeps. Do I have the neighbor from hell story for you? So this story came from Chelsea and it involves her neighbor Agnes. And normally I like to use fake names for the other party, at least in these stories, because I can't usually verify that what the person sending the story is saying is true. However, in this case, there were arrests made, charges filed, convictions, and jail time served. And so we're going to use Agnes's real name because we're going to try to prevent her from doing this to other people because this is just psychotic behavior. In 2020, Chelsea was looking for a new apartment and she has a pretty strict budget and she's looking in the Myrtle Beach area and she comes across this unit that's part of an apartment complex with exterior entrance units. So all of the units are separate. There's no central hallway or entrance to all of the units, if you know what I'm talking about. And the apartment complex wasn't perfect, but it mostly checked all the boxes. It was in a good location. It had a pool and it was good enough. So she's like, you know what, I'm going to sign, I'm going to move in. She moves in and she's kind of disappointed because most of the people that lived in this complex were significantly older than her. She said it almost felt like a retirement home and she kind of felt out of place because she was in her late 20s, early 30s at the time. However, she was excited because the person who lived in the unit right next to her appeared to be around her age, like late 20s, early 30s. She said she would see her new neighbor coming and going. They would exchange pleasantries. And finally, she just introduced herself. She said she's a very friendly person and gets along with anyone. And her new neighbor introduces herself as Agnes. Over time, Chelsea and Agnes gradually became friends. Chelsea said she started to notice that Agnes had a similar work schedule to her, which she found unlikely because Chelsea got off work around 1 or 2 in the morning. So when she'd be off late, entering her unit around 1 or 2 in the morning, Agnes would be there entering her unit at the same time. And sometimes they would stand out in the hallway and they would talk because Chelsea says she's usually pretty wired after work and doesn't like to go right to bed anyway. It got warmer outside. Chelsea said she would have friends over to come to her apartment complex's pool, and they would be hanging out, and they would see Agnes come out, and they would just invite Agnes to come and hang out with them. And sometimes Agnes wasn't invited, but she sort of just latched onto their friend group. But Chelsea said she genuinely did not mind. She did think that Agnes was a little bit strange, but was like, we're all weird, so it didn't bother me. She did say that she didn't really go out of her way to hang out with Agnes. It was just if Agnes was around, she was usually invited. But as I said, Chelsea got off work late at night, and because she didn't like to go to bed right away, sometimes she would have some people over, and she assumes that maybe the sound is what initially made Agnes angry and what made her hatch this plan. She doesn't really understand why Agnes ended up doing what she did, but if it was the sound that made her angry, she doesn't understand why she didn't just text her and tell her to calm it down, like they had each other's phone numbers. And Chelsea began to be harassed by Agnes. She didn't know it was Agnes. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're going forward. But she said it started with strange messages, and she would get messages on various social media platforms from her friends and family members saying like, hey, were you hacked? Because I got this really weird message from you. Messages started off innocently enough, just inviting people over to her place, but the messages seemed to be coming from Chelsea's account on WhatsApp, which is basically a text messaging app. Was registered to her name, but she was like, I don't use this app. So she was like, that's weird. I don't know what's going on. It's not me. Don't come over. But then the messages got stranger. They were from random men that she knew, and they would send her screenshots and be like, hey, was this really you that sent this? And the messages were a little bit disturbing, and they would say, come over to my place. I'll be waiting for you. And they would go into graphic detail about what she was going to do to these men once they arrived at her place. She would respond to all these people and say, no, that's not me. Somebody has hacked me or is like impersonating me. Please report this to WhatsApp. But she said that she knew that whoever was doing it knew personal details about her, like the fact that she had 2 cats and she warned certain men of having allergies. So she had all these people reporting her impersonation account to WhatsApp, but nothing was really done. WhatsApp kind of gave her the runaround and wouldn't take down the account. Chelsea has her boyfriend over, and he's like, are you hungry? And she's like, yeah, I'm hungry. He's like, okay, well, do you want me to order a pizza, or do you want to stop and grab something when we go out? And she's like, I don't really know. So they don't decide anything, but she goes in the bathroom and she's finishing getting ready, and there's a knock at the door. So she's like, oh, he must have ordered a pizza. So she goes to the door to answer, and there's a random man that she recognizes from a local bar standing at her door. And she goes, can I help you? And her boyfriend walks up behind her, and he's like, who's this guy? And the guy's like, who's this guy? Because you invited me over here so that we could do X, Y, and Z, very dirty things. And she goes, what are you talking about? Her boyfriend's like, Chelsea, what is this guy talking about? And there's this whole back and forth before eventually the guy pulls out his phone and shows her a string of messages that supposedly came from her, inviting him over to do X, Y, and Z. Now it's not just people that she knows in real life that this impersonator is messaging. It's random strangers from the town where she lives who are now coming over to her house. She explains the whole situation to the guy. Luckily, the guy doesn't put up a fight or something. He's like, I'm so sorry, and he leaves. But at this point, Chelsea's freaked out. Her boyfriend's freaked out. He's like, you need to call the police. So she does, and she reports it, and she gets assigned a detective. From this point forward, there were numerous times that strange men showed up to her door, were peeking in her windows, and on one occasion, a guy was even trying to break in which she had to call the cops again. When the police came, they caught the guy. The guy explains that they had been communicating online and that Chelsea had told him that she had a fantasy which involved him breaking into her house. He shows the police a string of messages in which Chelsea apparently gave consent, even though it wasn't Chelsea. So now things are getting really serious. These were obviously taking a huge mental toll on Chelsea. She said she lived alone and she was constantly terrified of someone breaking into her house, but she still didn't know who was behind this impersonation account, and she still didn't suspect Agnes. How busy and chaotic things had been, she really hadn't talked to her either until one day she goes outside. She's tossing some trash in the dumpster and she sees Agnes heading back into her unit, and she waves at her. But Agnes, instead of saying hi or greeting her the way that she normally does, averts her eyes and basically darts back into her apartment. This made Chelsea suspicious of Agnes because she also realized at this point that all of her other neighbors had been looking out, keeping an eye on her unit, but Agnes had never offered or been around any time the police had been there. So at this point, she calls the detectives that she's been working with and she goes, hey, I have a suspicion that my neighbor Agnes is involved with what's going on. The detective ends up getting a warrant to search Ellis's phone, and the next day they show up, they handcuff her, they arrest her. In her phone, they found hundreds of photos of Chelsea along with the messaging app that she was logged into as Chelsea, communicating with all of these people that had been contacting and harassing Chelsea for months. Go to court, Agnes pleads not guilty, and the judge sends it to trial. She ended up being found guilty of second-degree harassment and spent 11 weeks in jail. These were her other charges, and here's her mugshot. Chelsea says she does not believe that Agnes's punishment was enough because she tortured her for almost a year, but she wanted to share this to prevent Agnes from doing this to anyone else, because she was like, if she would do it to me, if she would spend almost a year impersonating me and trying to get these strange men to come over to my apartment and possibly harm me, I don't know what she's done to other people or what she's planning in the future. So beware. I'm putting together a compilation of crazy neighbor and neighbor from hell stories, so if you have one, feel free to submit it. We'd love to hear it.
Don't watch this video at night when you're trying to go to bed, especially if you sleep alone. You've been warned. The story that was sent to me by somebody who wishes to remain anonymous has got to be the creepiest thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't know if y'all are ready for this one. I know I wasn't. If you made it this far, you probably love scary stuff as much as I do. Just remember, you asked for this. You stayed. Let's get into it. For the sake of the story, we will call this person Becky. So Becky's lived in her house for 2 years on September 1st. She's heard noises a few times during those years, but she's never experienced anything that really scared her to her core until recently. Earlier this year, her father was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. Her and her dad were extremely close, and sadly, he lost his battle on June 30th. A few months prior to his passing, he was placed on hospice. However, he was still alert and oriented. One day, Becky, her fiance, and her son were all driving to dinner when her son said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." Becky was like, "Okay, what's up?" Becky's fiance looks at her and says, "Just listen to him. He already told me this morning." Her son proceeds to tell her, "Mom, I saw Papa." Becky was like, "Yeah, son, we go see Papa every day." He said, "No, Mom, I saw Papa in our house. I saw him 3 times. One time he was standing in my doorway just looking at me, and the second time he was running by my door and went into your room, and then the third time I only saw his face and he was just peeking in the doorway at me." He then told his mom he wasn't sick Papa, he was normal Papa. He went on to tell Becky what her dad was wearing, and he described exactly what her dad's work uniform was. Becky immediately started hysterically crying, and she was like, "Oh my God, I have to call my dad." She told her dad and everything was fine. He felt fine, nothing was wrong. He was more worried about her. Fast forward to now last week, Becky was laying on the couch talking to one of her best friends. It was the middle of the night because she's a night shift worker and her friend goes into work in the middle of the night. She hangs up the phone with her best friend and it was around 3:30 in the morning. A few minutes go by and she sees this dark figure that's like 6-7 foot tall that looks like it's wearing some kind of cloak of some type go from her son's room down the hallway to her room. She was frozen in fear and texted her best friend what she saw. That evening, before going into work again, she decided to tell her fiancé what she had seen. He was hesitant to do so because he doesn't really believe in a lot of things. Nonetheless, she tells him and he just stared at her. She's like, "I know you don't believe me." He said, "No, Becky, on Wednesday night while you were sleeping, I saw it twice." He said it was just standing on your side of the bed and just staring at me. He saw it once at 1:30 in the morning, and then he went back to sleep and saw it again when he got up to get ready for work at like 4:30 in the morning. And he said that time he blinked and it was gone. He said he didn't tell her because he didn't want to scare her, but also he just didn't think she'd believe him. Towards the end of summer, he got up in the middle of the night one night and Becky felt him get up and then get back into bed, but she felt somebody standing behind her staring at her. She said she was too scared to roll over and look. She could feel it staring at her. Fast forward to this past weekend, her son comes to her again and says, "Mom, I need to tell you something." He proceeds to tell her that while he was using the bathroom a few minutes ago, he felt like somebody was watching him. He said he turned to look and there was a dark figure standing in Becky's bedroom doorway, leaning out looking at him. He said he could see what looked like stringy hair hanging down. Whatever this is, she's terrified that it took on the identity of her dad and that maybe her son has welcomed it into their home. She's looking for help, answers, anything. She needs advice. She's desperate for advice and suggestions on how to get this thing out of her house. She feels like she's tried everything. The only other weird thing that she's noticed is that all of a sudden she's being overran by spiders, but that just might be the time of the year, but it hasn't happened in years past. Can't wait to hear what y'all think about this one in the comments. As always, send me your scary stories.
Spooky story time. So on Halloween last year, 2025, my boyfriend, myself, a friend, and his mom decided to play with the Ouija board. Let me tell you, that was a very stupid mistake. During the spiritual session, I placed my hand on the board and couldn't move it. My friend became very disoriented and just didn't seem himself. His mother became very angry. My boyfriend and I went home and weird things started happening. Light flickering, hearing footsteps, doors and things opening on their own, and our cats were acting weird. So a few days later, we got our home blessed. Skip to about 2 months later, and that friend comes over, and he's acting very strange. So my now husband and I decide to perform an exorcism on him. Now, mind you, I'm not a preacher, so technically I had no idea what I was doing. I read certain passages from the Bible, like Psalms 23 and the Lord's Prayer, and I even put the Bible on his skin, and I left a burn mark when I did. Eventually, somehow, we got this thing exorcised, and our friend was back to normal. And then I saw a dark figure in our room, and it somehow possessed me. Turns out it wanted me this entire time. It wants me dead. I could feel this. My husband and friend ended up going and getting my husband's mom, who brought out an oracle board, and we ended up talking to a good spirit who told us some things, like whatever was trying to get to me had the initials of CM. I don't know anyone with those initials. The good spirit also said that we are not ever to touch a Ouija board again. This thing's in the house where I live. When I go to the main floor and sit on the couch in the front room, I look to the left, and in a clear crate is a Ouija board box. And every time I see it, I'm tempted to play again.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much, because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, it's... Yeah! Hi, bestie, I missed you. What are we having today? Or, most importantly, what were you already having? Exactly, like, you big back. Summer's around the corner. What are we doing? That's the person that's telling y'all to get a snack, right? Anyway, first and foremost, thank you for making my song viral. Like, it's not like viral, but like, I didn't expect y'all to do that. I love you. Thank you. Y'all that didn't hear it, if you like dance hall music, I just dropped the song. The Caribbeans are loving it. It's called Pose. Just click on my little music thing. You'll see it. Okay. I'm done yapping. On to the story time. For the sake of the story, let's call this girl Elena. Let's call her husband Bryson. Elena and Bryson have been married for 9 years now. 13 years ago, they met in college. Instantly clicked. They instantly fell in love. Graduated college, and soon after college, they got married. And like I said, they have now been married for 9 years. Here's the thing, though. Ever since Elena's wedding day, something changed. Doesn't quite know what it is, but something changed. Something changed in her husband. Something changed in her mother-in-law. But she doesn't know what it is because everyone is still normal. Everybody still loves everyone the same, but something changed and she cannot quite put her finger on it. Fast forward to about 2 years of them being married, right? She still feels the same. Something changed. Not only she still has that feeling, now she has a new feeling. And it's a weird feeling because she doesn't know why she's feeling it. And that feeling is that she feels stuck. Questions it every day, like, why do I feel stuck? This is my husband. I chose him. I want to marry this man. I want to spend the rest of my life with him. So why, something in my spirit, I just feel stuck? Now, I must also say, Elena, very smart girl, very intelligent. She graduated college. She graduated with her doctorates. So Elena make bank. So financially, she's good. You know what I mean? Like, and she would have been good with or without him. As far as the husband, Bryson, he only has a bachelor's degree. Nothing wrong with that. However, there's a huge difference between the amount of money that he makes and the amount of money that she makes. So I want to say it's safe to say that she's the breadwinner. That doesn't matter because they're married and they are a unit. Fast forward about 4 years into the marriage. Elena done got a promotion. She's making even more money than she was before. She should be at the top of the world, right? Except she wasn't because she found out that Bryson cheated on her. He was having a whole affair with another woman. Mind you, that woman can even remotely compare to Elena. Her looks, none of it. Should also add that Elena is the eldest daughter. If you know, you know. That should tell you everything you need to know. So Elena don't fuck around. She has a very good heart and she loves her husband, but she don't fuck around when it comes to, certain shit. Boom, Elena finds out that her husband cheated. So immediately she's like, yeah, I want a divorce. I don't want to stay with you. I want a divorce. She went ahead. She called a divorce lawyer, did the whole process and everything, told Bryson and his mother-in-law, and they weren't very happy to hear that. Bryson didn't want to lose his wife. He made a mistake. Please forgive him. You know the mama. He a man, he made a mistake, please forgive him. Elena not trying to hear none of that though. She like, if you loved me, you would have never did that. And honestly, I don't need you, you need me. But Elena tell him to kindly pack his stuff and please get out of my house. Respectfully, as she should. Except, Elena was met with a problem. Now I already told y'all, Elena don't fuck around. So when she say something, she mean that. This is why she was so surprised. A week later, her husband was in her bed. I say in her bed. She went out one night, had a meeting with a client, and the meeting didn't really go as well as she thought it was gonna go, and the client started to, get a little violent. Of course, her instinct is to call her husband. Well, yeah, her husband. He showed up, he handled the situation. Thing went good. He made sure she was okay, and he made sure, she went home safe. He dropped her home and then left, which is why she was surprised when she woke up the next day and he was on the bed next to her naked. When she woke up, she asked him, what happened? He told her that she texted him at 3 a.m. saying, please come here and stay with her. She's like, no, I didn't. But when she looked in her phone, she saw the text. She did. She texted that. She doesn't remember any of that. Little did she know that was going to happen a lot. To the point where they got back together and she don't be remembering doing that shit. Every time she would have like a moment where she come to her senses, she'll tell him like, no, I don't want to be with you. But then 10 minutes later, she finds herself telling him like she loves him. She wants him to stay. All of that. It's almost like she describes it as watching your body do everything you don't want to do. She found herself being stuck in that cycle for 5 extra years. It's to the point where she felt like she lost herself. Throughout those 5 years, she had this one dream. This one constant dream. She would always dream that she is in a room full of doors, but they are all locked. It don't matter what door she try, how bad she kick them, it's not happening. She constantly had that dream, and she would tell her husband about that dream. He always brushes her off. Of course, at this point, he's on his best behavior, right? One of the kind gestures that he does for her is to pay for her hair to get done every 2 weeks or so. Mom's friend is a hair salon owner, so she goes and she gets her hair washed for free. She don't gotta pay for nothing. And if she do, the husband handles it, right? Cool, remember that. Fast forward about 4.5 years later. We're now together for 8.5 years. At that point, she's following me on TikTok. She's looking at my videos. She loves my story time. One TikTok that she saw, and I mentioned something about feeling stuck, and that hit. Resonated with her so bad. And you know what? I feel like I should start showing y'all receipts so y'all know I'm real life not making this shit up. Be real careful, because last time I showed y'all receipt, I accidentally I tried to blur the person's name and y'all still saw the name. You can, you can see. It's a lot. It's like, yeah. Damn, we already at 7 minutes, but I don't want to keep doing parts for y'all, so I'm gonna try to fit it all in one video, because I love you. The stuck word that I used resonated with her so bad because that's how she feels so bad. You can see in the first few DMs, she's like, I feel stuck. That video was about somebody else that had bought the book. So she decided, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to buy the ebook. No, I want to leave this man, but I can't. I really feel like this has something to do with like spiritual. But she wasn't thinking anything but, soul tie and twin flames and all that. She's thinking this is a really hard soul tie to break. So she bought Cleansed and Covered and the Break Cleanse. Plan was she was going to use Cleansed and Covered, see if that worked, and if it does work and she does leave, then use Breakup Cleanse. Of course, she decided to do the fast, and she said that the first 2 days were very normal. No, nothing crazy, but by day 3, her dreams started to be real weird. Started to have that dream, like every time she slept, she had that same dream, the one being stuck in the house, Boom, by day 3, the fast is done. She's trying to see what's happening, Besides the weird dream thing, everything is still kind of cool. Until it seemed like her husband just keeps starting arguments with her. Like, over nothing. And usually, she would be, like, anxious and would want to keep the peace and stuff like that. But for some reason, she felt detached. She's like, oh, shit, the book worked. She's sitting here like, it's almost as if I don't give a fuck no more. What? She's starting to feel happy. She's like, oh my God, did Blizzy just give me the confidence to actually get the divorce now? A little did she know. Wait, so she started to notice a smell around the house after she did that fast, right? She thought everything was normal because everything was normal, except it wasn't. There was this one smell that she kept smelling. And she would keep looking all over the house to where that smell is coming from. But of course, she's not associating the smell with the fast that she just did because, you know, that don't got nothing to do with nothing. The smell wasn't going away at all. No matter how many times she cleans, she sprays, she keeps smelling it. So she decides to try and follow the smell. As she's trying to follow the smell, it's as if somebody is leading her to the smell, right? It leads her to under her mattress, where she found a glass bottle with herbs in it and one of her tampons and other stuff that I'm not gonna name because y'all like to try stuff. It was at that moment she realized, oh shit, this nigga has been doing voodoo on me. Then her other first thought was, I can't wait to tell Blizzy this. Low-key, hate that y'all be going through those traumatic stuff, but I love that I'm the first person y'all think of. Wait, immediately, once she realized that this is like very spiritual, she went straight to grandma, baby. And guess what? Grandma took care of it. When grandma took care of it, come to find out, Bryson didn't even want to marry her in the first place, but his mom made him because she had money. Bryson loved her and stuff, but not to marry her. He didn't even want to marry her. When she tried to leave when he cheated, the mom is the one that did the bottle and gave it to him to keep in the house to make sure she stays in the house and she don't leave him. She's now very happy to announce that she has officially filed for divorce. Congratulations, Elena. Please congratulate her in the comments. I'm proud of you, girl. If you're watching and you still haven't gotten your book, what other signs do you need? Okay, I love you. Bye. Don't forget to tell me what you're eating in the comments, okay?
One of my followers sent this story in, and it's the total classic ghost story. She says that when she was a kid, her and her siblings and her cousins spent a lot of time at their grandparents' house. It was a safe, beautiful neighborhood, and it was one of the oldest houses in the neighborhood, and they all just adored the home. They just grew up in it, as did her mother and her siblings. But as much as they all loved this old house, there were some areas in there that gave them the ick. So her grandparents originally bought the place in 1968. She said before then it had been some type of boarding house. 2 unrelated couples had lived in it, one on each floor. The couple that lived on the main floor were a younger couple and they had a small child. And upstairs were a much older couple and they were called Mr. and Mrs. Holiday. They didn't have any children, they just had each other, and they were a very small and quiet couple. She said that Mr. Holiday, the larger of the two, was barely 5 foot tall. They had been together for about 65 years when one day Mr. Holiday struck his wife and he claimed that he didn't know her. Doctors said that it was aggressive dementia and within just a few months he was gone. This left poor Mrs. Holiday all alone. So after his death, Mrs. Holiday became very nasty and hostile. She never had anything nice to say to anybody else. She would zone out and stare out her bedroom window and often stomp on the floor and tell the couple below them to quiet that baby down. She did say other than that though, she was pretty silent. Until one night, the young couple were putting their baby to sleep and all of a sudden they heard a loud noise coming from above. And then after the initial loud noise, they just heard this continued thud, 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 thud. They looked at each other just knowing something did not seem right. Even though they'd actually never gone upstairs before, they knew that they needed to go up and check on Mrs. Holiday. So they quietly crept up the stairs, following this noise that they heard, and they would call her name very quietly. They were looking all around and they just couldn't find her. But then that thudding sound kept getting closer as they walked. They were getting warmer. And that led them right up to the door of a closet. The closet wasn't very wide, but it was tall. And they both stopped, looked at each other, and then slowly opened up the door. And unfortunately, there, hanging from the metal clothing rack, was Mrs. Holiday. Her body was still swinging into the wall, but at this point making a very light thud sound. So she says, that was the story that my mother and siblings grew up hearing. It is said that Mrs. Holiday's ghost lingers around in the house, and they were told never to go upstairs and especially not near the closet. Okay, so her uncle now tells this story from when he was a kid in that house. He said something absolutely horrible happened. So he and his friends all thought it would be fun to scare each other and play around upstairs. And the friends dared the uncle to go in the closet and sit in the dark for 5 minutes. He took on the challenge and he thought to himself, this isn't real, so why not? So he goes in the closet and he turns off the light and he shuts the door and he's sitting there in silence. At first he said it felt fine, but then after a minute or two, he said that it started to feel like it was getting cramped, like it was somehow getting smaller in there or tighter. But how could that be so? But then he heard it in the absolute silence, in the pitch blackness. He heard a heavy breathing coming from right behind him. And just then he felt something and looked down at his shoulder and saw very tiny, frail, pale, skinny, old fingers gripping him by the shoulder. So he's screaming at this point. He's trying to scramble and get out of the closet. And then the thudding sound starts. Thud, 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 coming right from inside the closet. Ew, I have goosebumps. The thud got louder and louder, and he is freaking terrified. And then he is able to get the door open. His friends took one look at him, and they're screaming now because he was just terrified and pale as a ghost. He says that when she was a child, her uncle would always tell her, or if not beg her, to never go upstairs and anger Mrs. Holiday. She said since then the house is sold, but she did get to talk to the next owner and asked her if anything strange goes on there. And the new owner did say that from time to time they hear a strange thud coming from upstairs. So creepy. I love it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you have a creepy story of your own, you gotta send it in. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time.
Let's read a scary bedtime story. I learned early in medicine that fear has a smell. It's not blood, not antiseptic, it's older than both. Metallic, yes, but sweet too. Like breath held too long, like pennies soaked in honey. Once you notice it, you never stop noticing it. It was strongest in room 317. The chart said unresponsive, the monitors said stable. The patient said nothing at all, because his jaw had been wired shut after he tried to bite through his own tongue. They told me he was found in his apartment clawing at the walls, fingernails torn off, dry blood in crescent shapes around every light switch, every mirror. He hadn't been trying to escape. He'd been trying to get out. His eyes tracked me when I entered, too alert for someone sedated, too aware. The smell hit me immediately. Fear. Fresh, ripe, humming. I checked his pupils, even, dilated just a little too wide. "Can you hear me?" I asked. He nodded, once, slow, careful, like movement cost him something. I lifted the clipboard so he could see the pen and paper clipped to it. "You can write," I said. His hand shook violently when I placed the pen in his fingers. The moment the tip touched the paper, he froze. Every muscle locked. His eyes rolled toward the ceiling like he was watching something pace above him. Then he wrote, "It's still practicing." My stomach dropped. That familiar clinical instinct kicked in. The one that tries to rationalize before panic has time to bloom. "Practicing what?" I asked. His breathing spiked. Monitors chirped softly. He scratched at the paper so hard the pen tore through it. "Us," he said. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. A reflex. Nurses laugh at the worst things. We call it coping. That's when he started crying. Not sobbing, not shaking, just tears leaking silently from the corners of his eyes, tracking sideways into his hairline as he lay flat. He wrote again. "It learns where you look," he said. The lights flickered, just once, barely noticeable, the kind of thing hospitals do all the time. Still, every hair on my arm stood up straight. I stepped closer to the bed, lowered my voice. "What do you think is here with you?" He squeezed his eyes shut. His fingers twitched like something was pulling on invisible strings beneath his skin. Then, very carefully, he wrote, "Don't turn around." I turned around. Nothing there, just the door. The hallway beyond it stretched long and empty, fluorescent lights buzzing like trapped insects. A janitor's cart sat abandoned near the nurse's station. When I turned back, the patient was screaming. Sound tore through the wires in his jaw. Wet, muffled, wrong. Blood bubbled between his teeth as he thrashed against the restraints, eyes locked on something over my shoulder. Something I could feel now. Pressure, like standing too close to a speaker turned up too high, like being watched by something that didn't need eyes. The smell was everywhere. Fear. Mine now. The heart monitor flatlined. Code blue, shouts, footsteps, hands everywhere. Someone pulled me back as the room filled with bodies and noise and motion. But even as they worked him, shocked him, called the time of death, I couldn't stop thinking about the paper. I went back after, told myself it was for documentation, for closure or sanity. The room was empty, cleaned already, bed stripped, no sign of struggle, except the paper, still clipped to the board. One final line had been added beneath the others, the handwriting steadier now, more confident. "You turned around too fast." I laughed again, harder this time. shoved the paper into my pocket, and told myself I needed sleep. That night at home, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. It blinked a fraction of a second after I did. I stared and held my breath. The delay stretched, subtle, wrong. Then my reflection smiled. I didn't. Behind it, behind me, something shifted. Not visible, not exactly. Just a distortion, like heat over asphalt, like a shape being rehearsed. My reflection raised a finger to its lips. And on the mirror, written backward in fogged glass, were the words, "Thank you for practicing." Sweet dreams.
A woman told me that the ocean claimed me when I was a child, and now I'm starting to think that she was correct. This story is coming to us from someone who said that we can call her Selena. Selena says that she has lived by the water her entire life, from birth until present day. She said the water feels as essential to her as oxygen. From a very young age, she was taught to respect the water, respect its power, respect what it can do to you. But she says that that's something that she's always carried with her. So as she aged, she became more confident around the water, more confident in the water. So her parents did give her like a little more leeway to kind of play by herself when it came to going to the beach. Now, while Selena said she had always loved the water and it had always just been like this big playground for her, she said that there is this one day when everything kind of seemed to change. She said when this happened, she was about 8 years old. She was playing on the beach. She was kind of by herself. She was still in eyesight of her parents, but she was down the beach a ways and she was alone. She says she's sitting there, she's playing in the sand, and all of a sudden a fish jumps up out of a wave and then lands on the beach, like in the sand. It's like beached itself essentially. So she says that she remembers watching this fish flop around, and she realizes like, if I don't help this fish, like it's not going to survive. So Selena says she walks over to the fish, she picks it up, and she like very gently returns it into the next wave that comes in, and the fish swims away. After this happens, Selena starts getting gifts from the ocean, little trinkets, pretty shells, things like that. She said when she was a kid, she thought that this was magic. She was like, oh my gosh, like look at what the sea gave me, like this is so cool. And then as she got older, she just like kind of realized like, okay, it's tides, it's constant moving water, so everybody finds things in the ocean. But this was a consistent throughout her life. Whenever she went to the beach, she would find jewelry, she would find the prettiest shells. But the magic faded as she aged, and she just kind of let it go. Selena says we're going to fast forward to her 20s. Her and her friend decide that they are going to take a girls trip, so they go to a resort in the Caribbean. The first day that they're there, they decide that they're going to go on a snorkeling excursion. So they go out, they take the boat, they get in the water. Selena says it's absolutely beautiful. It's like the prettiest reef, the prettiest fish that she's ever seen, and she's just out there, she's snorkeling, she's swimming around, and she says that all of the fish just start like brushing up against her, brushing up on her arms, swimming between her legs, and then one even like swims through her hair. None of the fish seem to be super interested in the friend that she's with, but her friend is just watching this. They surface, her friend is like, what? And she's like, I don't know, it must just be the lotion that I put on this morning. I don't know, it happens. This is not uncommon. The next day, Selena and her friend decide that they are going to go to a beach. They want to go to a quiet beach. So they get there, they're super excited, they put their stuff down. The first thing they do is they get in the water. When they get out of the water after swimming for a little while, Selena realizes, I put my sunglasses on top of my head and now they're gone. Selena has super sensitive eyes, so this is going to be a miserable day for her, but she's just going to power through it. Her friend is happy they found this beautiful spot. But about an hour passes, and Selena is frustrated at this point, and she says she stands up and she looks at her friend, and she says she'll give them back. She said her friend was like, who? And Selena said, the ocean. She'll give my glasses back. All I have to do is ask. Her friend looks at her and is like, your glasses were clear rimmed. Like, even if there was a chance of you finding them, they're clear. But Selena is confident. She's like, no, she's going to give them back to me. So she goes out into the water. She weighs out until she's about chest deep. She takes a deep breath. She dives down. And sure enough, right there, laying in the sand, are her sunglasses. So she says she grabs them up. She heads back to the beach. She's walking out. She's got her sunglasses on. And her friend is like, once again, what the? Selena just ends up telling her friend, like, look, the water's not super rough. The chances are high that I would be able to find them. And her friend was like, no. But Selena just tells her friend, like, it's fine, calm down, and they just end up spending a wonderful day at this beautiful beach, and she has her sunglasses. That evening, Selena and her friend decide that they are going to have dinner, like, out, but, like, within the resort. Dinner is great. They're finishing everything up. As they're sitting at the table, this woman walks up to them, a woman who works there, and Selena says that you can tell that she's local just by her accent. And she says this woman walks up to them and kind of like leans in and looks at Selena, and Selena's like, hey, how's it going? You know, like, she said she's a very friendly person, whatever. So this woman kind of like leans in and she looks at her and she says, oh, you're marked. You've been claimed by Atabey for a really long time. Selena says she has no idea what this woman is talking about. She's not familiar with that terminology. She's not familiar with that method. She's not familiar with any of it. Selena says she just looks at this woman and she's like, I'm very sorry, but I have no idea what that means. This woman looks at Selena and says, she gave you something when you were a kid, like when you were young, and you gave it back, didn't you? And Selena doesn't even say anything, but has the flashback to when the fish jumped on the beach and she walked over and gently put it back into the water and it swam away. She doesn't even say anything to this woman, doesn't mention that memory, nothing. And this woman just nods her head and says, the fish. Selena at this point says she may or may not have shat her pants. But this woman can tell by the look on Selena's face that she is correct. So she goes on to explain and tell her, like, look, she gave you that, you gave it back. And now your whole life, you get things that belong to us back from her. Things that do not belong to her, she gives back to you. Selena doesn't even know what to say at this point. She's just like, I'm sorry, who is she? So this woman explains to her that Atabey is the goddess of all horizontal water or something along those lines. Once again, Selena, not familiar with this. She's like, I am so sorry, but I am not familiar with this. I am not well educated in this. I don't know what you mean. The woman looks at Selena and she's like, that's perfectly fine. Like, you don't have to understand what I'm telling you. I am telling you what I see when I look at you, and you can take this as advice. You can take this as a warning. You can take this as whatever you want. But you are marked and you were claimed by her when you were a child. You do not need to talk to her when you are angry, because her vengeance knows no bounds when it comes to the people that she chooses, that she shows favor to. And the thing that I want you to remember is that for you, since you have been marked and you have been claimed, the water for you is as essential as breathing. And Selena said that is the way that she has felt about the water for a very long time. At this point, according to Selena, this woman's eyes are like darting around, like looking around the room, like trying to see if there's anybody listening. So Selena is just like, thank you for that information. Much appreciated. I'll look into that. Woman looks at Selena and says, I'm going to give you one last piece of advice. When it comes to being chosen by Atabey, when you're marked, when she gives you something and then you give it back, and then she gives you things that belong to us that she has kept forever or whatever, the one thing that I'm going to tell you is that it's good while it's good, and she's going to be good to you. But when she decides that you're the thing that she wants to keep forever instead of letting you go, there's nothing that you can do about it. Woman says no more, walks away, just like shuffles off as fast as she can. Selena says she looks at her friend and she just says, what the fuck? She and her friend decide to call it an early night, so they head up to their room, they get in bed, Selena falls asleep. That night she says that she has a dream, and in this dream she is standing on the beach, like kind of at the edge of the water. The water is coming up, but it's not quite reaching her feet, and she says she looks out over the water, and she says that about waist deep there is a woman standing in the water. She can't really see any features on this woman. She can tell that it's definitely a woman, and she says that this woman is standing in the water and like beckoning her to come towards her. But Selena feels like no ominous or bad feelings about this, so she starts to take a step. The woman puts her hands up and she's like, wait. So Selena, stops walking, and then she wakes up. Woke up, she thought that was weird, but she just kind of chalks it up to her mind trying to like reconcile everything, that conversation that she had with a woman who was probably just like maybe paid to like, pique people's interest. I don't know. The rest of the trip is completely uneventful. Selena goes back home, where she still lives near the water. It's just not in the Caribbean. And she goes back home, time goes on, everything is fine. She stays near the water. And she said that as her life has gone on, she has gotten job offers that are away from the coast. She has even gone as far to like signing leases on apartments, but things will always go wrong. The job will fall through. In one of the apartments that she had like signed a lease on, a pipe burst. Lease gone, over. She's not moving. That was like 3 hours away from the coast. She says that she keeps having this reoccurring dream of the woman standing in the ocean about waist deep in water, like beckoning her to come. And she says that in the dream, every time she has it, she gets a little bit closer before this woman puts her hands up and makes her stop. Now, she hadn't had that dream until she talked to that woman in the Caribbean who told her about Atabey. She did say from that conversation, whenever she goes to the beach or whenever she's around the water, she never has deep conversations. She never talks about who she's mad at or what she's angry about. Because the one thing that this woman said to her, that Atabey's fury knows no bounds, that's like one thing that really scared her. And she was like, you know what, of all this, like that's what I'm going to take away from it. Like I am going to listen. Selena says she knows she's never going to be able to move away from the water. It's just, it won't allow it. And she really doesn't want to. But she says that the thing that the woman said about like when it decides, like when she decides that she wants to keep you and not give you back, there's nothing that you can do about it. So Selena says that she is convinced that as her life goes on, like when she finally ultimately does leave this world, that will be happy. I don't know much about Atabey. I honestly hadn't even heard of this goddess until this story came in, so I did do like a little reading up on it. And from what I can read, she does just sound like a very like motherly type figure, like very loving, very nurturing. And she is like, I think it's either like said to be the goddess of like all water, like oceans, rivers, even rain, and then sometimes like just the goddess of like horizontal water, so not rain or waterfalls. But I don't know, let me know what you think about that. Have a good day, and I will see you tomorrow.
This story right here is actually your typical Haitian horror story. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Sandra. So when Sandra was 4, living in Pasadena, California, her dad and her mom knew this woman. She was a voodoo lady, a mambo, or whatever you call it. Every single time they went to her house, saw the guy didn't feel very good. Every single time they were there just eating or sitting around, Sandra felt sick. And Sandra describes the feeling as something trying to separate her soul from her body. Every time they turned the corner onto the Mumble Street, Sandra could have been fine all day, but suddenly, as soon as they turn into that corner, Sandra is sick. One day, Sandra asked her father for a slinky, and he bought one. However, he didn't buy the slinky for Sandra. He actually bought it for her baby sister. And she was arguing with her dad because why would a 1-year-old need a slinky? Which, note to self, no one argues with a Haitian parent, specifically not Sandra's dad. But while Sandra is explaining why it's preposterous for a 1-year-old to have a slinky, he popped her in the butt. It didn't hurt, but she cried out of frustration and she kind of ran off. At this point, homegirl is sad, sitting in the front steps, licking her wound. Sandra says that she remembers doing like the double sniffle thing, like the when kids are crying. Then the weirdest thing happened. Out of nowhere, her neck just backwards. 1 second ago, Sandra was crying about a slinky.
This right here is one of the scariest moments caught on camera. It will make you understand that if something paranormal happens in your house, man, it's not for the weak. It all started in 2021 in the Philippines in this exact place with these 2 siblings. You see, the older sister, the one right here, was a nurse student, as you can see, and she had a YouTube channel where her brother was filming her, and in these videos, well, she will show the procedure of her studies and her future job. You know, every time she wanted to do a video for her YouTube channel, she would call her brother, he starts filming her, and she starts explaining stuff about nursing. The main reason she was doing this was to prepare and study for her final nursing exam, and one day, while talking and explaining, well, something happened. At one point in the video, she was talking, and as you can see, the light completely changed. It's because the light above her started flickering. This is where her brother, you know, the one who was filming her, completely freaked out and immediately raised his head to see what happened. After that, he raised the camera. His sister told him to keep filming. She was like, yeah, that's probably nothing. Just keep filming, okay? So, what was I saying? Yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3. 3 seconds after she started explaining again, the closet opened by itself. This happened so fast that they both freaked out and stopped filming. Later that day, she came back to prove that what happened was not fake. She started explaining that she was next to the closet, and the closet was actually so full of clothes, there is nobody that can fit inside. She then proceeded to show where her brother, the one who was filming, was standing, and then she showed that he was very far from the light switch, meaning that he was not the one messing with the lights. She even decided to install a night camera, and this is where things became really scary. Because soon after, the camera caught the chair moving by itself, the closet opening and then brutally shutting, just like what happened with them when they were filming. But the worst of all of these things is by far this. If you're asking, bro, what the hell is even this? Well, something was moving inside the closet and you can actually see it.
Ask for his consent, verify the client's identity, and provide...
Ano ito?
Sige na. 1, 2, 3, go. Now that I have introduced myself to the patient, So this is where it all began, and this is the cabinet, and I'm actually very afraid to touch it. This is where my brother stood, and this is the light switch. So
Bro, what in the 7 hells is even this? If this happened to me, I would start questioning my existence.
So he just knocked him to the ground and then left him there?
Go outside so I can run this mouth now. Focus. Scary story time.
I don't want to leave any details out of this story, so I'm going to read you the email and then I'm going to run my mouth. I'm not proud of who I was back then, so I guess this is me admitting I was wrong about a lot of things. Fall 2010, senior year, starting pitcher. I walked around like I was 10 feet tall, thought being good at baseball meant I was better than everyone. The party was at this abandoned barn about 15 minutes outside of town. Gravel road that turned into ruts, wood thick on both sides, real Appalachian woods. At first, we were outside around a fire. Once it got dark, some of the girls started saying they kept hearing something moving behind the barn. Instead of calming them down, we decided it would be funny to move everyone inside and investigate. Really, we just wanted to scare them a little. Inside the barn, we all noticed it right away. An old rope ladder hanging down from the loft. Thick rope with wooden slats. That's not normal. Everybody there grew up around barns. Almost all of us had one at home. You use solid wooden ladders bolted in, not rope, not something that sways like that. We all looked at it, didn't say much. Then Tyler decided he'd climb it. The girls were squealing, telling him not to. He loved the attention, grinning the whole way up. Halfway up, he goes, "What if something's up there?" Then he gets to the top and said, "There's something," and then he disappeared. Not fell, not slipped, gone, like someone yanked him backward out of sight. We all thought he was joking at first, waiting for him to pop up laughing, but he didn't. The girls started yelling at us to go get him, saying this wasn't funny anymore. They thought we were messing with him. We were all looking at each other because this was not part of anything we'd planned. They kept pushing me to go since I was the brave one. I did not want to. My stomach felt cold all of a sudden. I yelled up, "Tyler, knock it off, it's not funny." Nothing. I put one foot on the ladder, then another, took maybe 2 steps up. That's when he screamed. It was the worst sound I'd ever heard come out of a person. Deep, real, not playful at all. He suddenly came back into view at the top, scrambling, screaming, "Move, move," as he slid down the rope ladder. Before I could get out of the way, he lost his footing and crashed into me, and we both hit the ground hard. He was sitting there on the dirt, pointing to the loft, pushing himself backward like something was coming down after him. "Run, now," he kept yelling. He scrambled up and bolted for the door. It took about half a second for the shock to wear off. Then everyone was screaming. The girls ran fast. We were right behind them. I jumped in my truck and reached into my pocket for my keys. They weren't there. My heart dropped. Everyone else was already peeling out, gravel flying. I was the last one. That's when I realized my keys must have fallen out when he knocked me down. I grabbed my phone, no service. From inside the barn, I heard something dragging across wood, slow, heavy. 3 thuds on the floor below the loft. 1, 2, 3. Like something had just climbed down. I reached into my glove box and grabbed a flashlight. I had to go back in. I didn't have a choice. I was shining the flashlight in the direction of the ladder, and that's when I saw them. My keys were on the ground, right under the rope ladder, not where I remembered falling. These were centered, like they'd been placed there. The ladder wasn't moving. I didn't look up. I couldn't. I grabbed them and ran. As I slammed my truck door, something hit the roof of my truck, hard enough to leave a dent. Threw it in reverse, my headlights swept across the loft. For half a second, I saw a shape crouched at the edge. Too long, arms hanging lower than they should be, and eyes that caught the light. Tyler didn't stop running that night. He ran all the way home, about 6 miles. He didn't come back to school. He ended up spending 15 months in a psych ward 2 counties over. Wouldn't talk about what he saw, just kept saying it wasn't alone up there. I still live in the mountains, but my kids know to stay away from barn parties. Is that not the scariest story? That is a scary story. Love these stories. I don't know what it was. I don't want to know what it was, but I could picture it the whole time that I was reading it. Thanks so much for sending it in. If you have stories like this, send them to me.
You should always be careful as to who you accept food from, even if it's from your own family. The person who submitted the story would like to be anonymous, so let's call her Marisol. My mom passed away suddenly last year due to a brain aneurysm. One day she was perfectly fine and the next day she was gone. Our whole lives it had just been the 2 of us. She did have an older sister that I had never really met. Apparently they had a falling out before I was born and she was just never brought up. After my mom's funeral, I was completely devastated. I honestly felt like I had buried myself with her. 2 days after the funeral, my aunt Celia, my mom's older sister, just randomly showed up. And she didn't show up empty-handed. She had a tray of food with her. At first, I was a little taken aback as to why my Aunt Celia was just randomly showing up, especially since I had never really met her before. But I was also like welcoming her because I felt so alone after the passing of my mom. But that week after she showed up every single day, always with a tray of food. And it was not just like your average food, it was like my favorite stuff, like arroz de guandules, pernil with the crispy skin on top, maduros, sancocho with extra yuca. It was almost like she knew exactly what I liked. And she wouldn't just drop it off when she would come by. She would stand there and watch as I ate. And she would always be like, eat me, huh? Like, you need your strength. Like, you need to get better. I honestly thought that she was doing all of this out of pure love. A few weeks later, I started to get sick. I would have constant stomach aches, headaches. I couldn't sleep. I felt exhausted all the time. And my hair started to randomly fall out. I went to the doctor to get tested, but they couldn't find anything wrong with me. Every doctor I went to, time and time again, would tell me that I was perfectly fine, that my health was okay, that it was probably due to the stress of losing my mom. Then the nightmares started. I started to have these crazy nightmares about this woman dressed in all black, standing in the corner of my room, just like watching me and taunting me. A lot of the nights I would be paralyzed, unable to move. Sometimes I could even swear that this woman dressed in all black looked just like my aunt. I decided to stop eating her food, which is when she stopped coming over. A few days later, I started to feel a little bit guilty, thinking that maybe I was just overthinking the whole situation and that I should stop by her house so I could thank her. When I showed up at her house, her door was kind of like half opened. I called her name, she didn't answer, so I kind of like pushed the door open and it like swung open. I walked in calling out for my aunt, thinking that she was probably in the kitchen making one of her delicious meals, when I was hit with this smell, this overwhelming smell of like rotten food. I walked towards the kitchen where it was coming from the strongest, when it hit me that it was coming from the fridge. When I opened that fridge, I literally almost threw up. Her fridge was filled with glass jars full of animal parts. She goes into more description as to the type of animals that were in there. I don't want to get this video taken down, so I won't go into detail, but there were like our furry best friends' animal parts in there. I threw up immediately and ran out of the house calling the police. I'm going to have to do a part 2. This is part 2 of the Brujeria story time. After I saw what I saw in my aunt's fridge, I literally threw up and I ran out of the house and I called the cops. When the cops got there, they pretty much brushed off what I had to say. They said that it was probably roadkill. They said that it wasn't illegal unless they could prove that it was like that she had actually done, to the animals. They decided not to pursue any charges against my aunt. One of the officers did take me a little bit more seriously and he pulled me aside. He asked me with a very serious tone, has anything strange been happening to you lately? I went ahead and just told him everything about the dreams or the nightmares, about the food, like everything. I honestly thought that he was going to brush it off as well or maybe laugh at me, but his face got even more serious. Then he brought out a little like writing pad and he wrote down the number of a person and gave it to me. He said, this is a spiritualist that may be able to help you. He told me that this was completely off the record, but that this wasn't the first time that he had encountered something like this. Before I tell you what ended up happening next, I need to give you a little backstory on the history between my mom and my aunt. Years ago, before I was born, they both loved the same man. He chose my mom, married her, and my aunt Celia never married. She never had children of her own. My grandmother also always favored my mom, so did everyone else in the family. My aunt always believed that my mom stole her life. After my mom passed away, everything went to me, including the house that sits on a land that's been in our family for generations. My aunt had been pushing my mom to sell it to her for years, but my mom would always refuse. If I were to die with no children and unmarried, the property would have been passed down to my aunt as next of kin. I didn't know that at the time. After I contacted the spiritual worker, he did a cleansing on me. On the second night of doing practically a purge, I started to gag uncontrollably. I threw up something very thick and black. It looked like tar mixed with strands of hair. The spiritualist did not look surprised. She said, you were being fed with intention. She explains that some forms of brujeria, like anything having to do with food, automatically gives you a spiritual tie because by you eating it, it's like you are willingly accepting it and it binds you to it. The spiritualist also explained that once I got cleansed, that it was going to go back to its original sender. 3 weeks later, my aunt had a massive stroke, completely out of nowhere. She lost the ability to speak, and she ended up passing away 3 days later. After that experience, I would not accept food from anyone unless I see them prepare it right in front of my eyes. The fact that I was grieving definitely made me extremely vulnerable. Unfortunately, no charges were ever filed against my aunt for all of the animal parts that I found in her fridge. But I know what really happened, and I want to make sure that everyone else knows as well. Sometimes the real curse is the person that is sitting right at your table. I don't do potlucks. I don't accept food from people unless I trust you or I've seen you prepare it right in front of me. Because you honestly just never know. Side note, anything that you eat that has to do with brujeria is the hardest thing to get rid of spiritually.
You know why something evil has to ask permission to come into your house? It sort of goes back to this old belief that nothing evil, nothing negative can enter into your life, can enter into your home unless you give it permission. See, we naturally have this protective barrier surrounding us. Some people call it guardian angels. Some people call it, a protective spirit. But we are naturally protected from these sort of things. But these evil, these negative entities try and break us down and get us to open that space, to allow them to come in. And so our homes, where we live, where we love, where we share intimate moments, right? That becomes a protective space. And this evil entity cannot enter through that doorway until you give it permission. Now, this story comes out of North Carolina. There was this woman who said when she was a young girl, she grew up in a small home up in the Appalachian Mountains. And she said when they first moved into this house, she remembers at night hearing what sounded like young children out in the woods laughing and saying things and calling her to come outside. And she would see shadows moving across her window like someone was walking around out there. She just ignored it, and she really had no idea what was going on. And she had heard stories, she had heard rumors from friends, that if anything evil comes to your door or invites you outside, do not listen to them, do not follow. Well, this one particular night, her parents left her in charge of watching her brothers and sisters. And she said they were running around the house playing when all of a sudden she got kind of this sick feeling in her stomach, like something was wrong. And she said her brother started screaming and started freaking out and crying. And she's like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong? And he says, they're coming for us. Like, they're going to get us. They're coming. And she's like, what are you talking about? Who's coming? And he just kept saying, like, they're coming. And all of a sudden they hear boom, 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 like a knock at the front door. So she runs over to the window and she looks out. And she said at the front door was this young boy, with an old-timey haircut and wearing sort of like this blue jacket and blue pants with these like black boots. And she said he just looked out of place. She knew something was wrong. So she calls out to him from behind the door. Yes, like, what do you want? What do you need? And she said this boy responded, please, let me in. Please, let me in. And she's like, no, I'm not supposed to open the door. Mom and Dad are gone. Like, I can't open the door for you. And he's like, please, it's cold. Let me in. And she said, no, you're going to have to go somewhere else. I'm not opening the door. And right as she says that, the lights in the house started to flicker. And she said she took her brothers and sisters, they ran into their mother's room, and she closed the door, and they all just started praying. And finally their parents got home, and they felt safe again. And she said within a couple weeks, it was all over this town that there was a young kid who disappeared. And she felt like that had something to do with whoever was knocking on the door then. A mimic and a doppelganger are the exact same thing. They are a type of evil spirit that mimic people, animals, objects in attempts to take over a person's body. I've heard two stories about mimics that I believe are true. The first one comes from a veteran who said when he was a young boy, he was at home watching TV. His dad was out of town and his mom was at work. Now, as he's sitting there watching TV, he sees his dad from the corner of his eye walk into the hallway and down to his parents' bedroom. So he's thinking, oh, Dad's home. That's awesome. He goes and runs to the bedroom, except his dad's not in there. And then he goes to his brother's bedroom, and his brother's like, hey, did Dad come home? Because I just seen him walk down the hallway. And they both realize that they seen their dad, but he was not there. So they go on the phone, and they call him, and they're like, hey, Dad, are you back in town or something? Or, like, what's going on? And their dad's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm still in New York. The second story comes from Mexico, in a small little town in Cholula, Mexico. Now, this comes from a man named Santos, who when he was a young boy, he lived in this small little village. And His mom at nighttime would always close and lock the windows and the doors, and she was very nervous when nightfall would come. And so one day, Santos gets up in the middle of the night and he hears like noise coming from the living room. And he goes in there and he sees his mom. And she goes, I want you to go outside, go into the woods, and gather some firewood for the fireplace. And he goes, at the middle of the night? And she's like, just do it right now. Go out and gather me some firewood. So he says, hold on. He goes back to his room to get his shoes on. And he realizes his mom. Have you ever heard the old saying, you shouldn't step or stand on a grave? Now, there was this young adult named Barry. And Barry and his friends decided they wanted to go out to the cemetery one night. Now, this cemetery was known to be haunted, and there were all these stories and legends. So him and his buddies, they go to the cemetery, and they're walking around with flashlights, kind of scaring each other. And he said that he was walking on the graves. And one of his friends said, hey, Barry, like, you shouldn't walk on top of the graves or stand on them. Like, it's bad luck. And Barry said, what are you talking about? Like, I don't believe in any of that. So he starts stomping on this grave and then, like, spits on it. And is like, what's going to happen to me? A ghost going to get me? So he said, while they were in the cemetery, nothing really happened. So he didn't think anything of stepping on the grave or anything. Well, when he got back home, he just had kind of this bad feeling that maybe he shouldn't have done that. And so when he got to his house, he goes inside, and his girlfriend is in the kitchen, and she's cooking a big meal. Barry says, hey, what's up, and stuff. And she goes, where'd you go? And he goes, oh, I went out to the cemetery with some of my buddies. Well, as he's talking to his girlfriend, he sees someone standing behind her. And he's like, who's behind you? And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, do you have a guy in the house or something? Like, who's behind you? And she looks around and she's like, what are you talking about? There's no one behind me. And he said, there's a guy standing behind you. And like, she couldn't see him, but he could see this guy, like, and he was wearing a flannel and jeans and boots. And he had just this very pale, long face, this brown kind of shaggy hair, and a, longer kind of beard. And he's just standing behind his wife. And, Barry's kind of like, what's going on? Like, you don't see that? And she's like, no, I don't, or you're starting to scare me. So Barry's like, whatever. He goes out of the room. He comes back. He doesn't see the guy anymore. And so that night, right, he is laying in bed, and his girlfriend's right next to him. He is just like tossing and turning because he can't really sleep because he's thinking about, what happened at the cemetery. And when he turns over towards where his girlfriend's sleeping, he sees this man, the same man he's seen behind his girlfriend. And he is in between him and his girlfriend. And he jumps out of bed and he's like, what the heck? Who are you? Who are you? What are you doing here? And his wife's like, or his girlfriend's like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? And he's like, who's the man in the bed? And she's like, there's no man in the bed. And so like he walks out of the room and is like, I can't handle this. He comes back into the room to apologize to his girlfriend and check to see if that he can still see this guy, and the guy's not in there. And for like weeks, he was like seeing this guy standing behind his girlfriend. And so he said he got in his car one night, he drove to the cemetery, and he went back to that grave that he had stomped on, and he apologized and was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect you, and like, I hope you can forgive me and leave me alone. And he said, like, all of a sudden he just got this overwhelming feeling like everything was going to be okay. And he went back home and he didn't see this guy anymore. Have you ever noticed a business in your town or city that has been there for years, but you never see anybody go inside? And it looks vacant, it looks like no one works there, but for some reason it has stayed in business all these years. Now, in the town that I grew up in, there was this car lot. And since I was a kid, the same exact cars have been sitting in that lot. They never sell any vehicles. You never see anybody looking at cars. People don't go into this business. There isn't any car salesman. It always looks empty, but it's been there for many, many years. And I tried calling the phone number a couple times, it just goes to an answering machine. When you go to the door, it is locked, but yet it seems like it's an active car lot. Now, there was another man from Milwaukee, and he said he grew up just outside of Milwaukee, this small little town. And he said there was this dress shop that moved in one day on this corner street. And he said, you know, they'd put up signs and there were all these dresses in the front window, but they never fully opened it up. It was never open for business. But for many years, this dress shop just sat there on the corner and nothing ever was sold. They never seen anybody go in there. So he said, you know, many years when he was older, he came back to town and he was walking his dog. And he thought, you know, I'm curious, like, what's going on with that dress shop? So he said he went around to the back and there was this window. And as he looked in, he said he could see this man, and he watched this man sort of walk into this ball of light and disappear. And he said that freaked him out. Him and his dog got out of there. But he said still to this day, that wedding dress shop sits there vacant.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
What is going on with Jim Carrey? So recently, Jim Carrey was spotted at an award show, and he did not look like himself. Several people noticed that there was something off about his face. Now, a lot of people speculated that he was replaced by a clone. But I have another theory. I think perhaps that was a mimic that was at that award show. Now, there's a very famous story out of the eastern part of the United States. There was this man named Kevin. Kevin lived in a holler in the Appalachian Mountains with his mom, his dad, and his brother and sisters. And on the weekends, his parents would often leave him alone watching his brothers and sisters. So one Friday night, his parents went out somewhere and they put him in charge. Most of the night goes pretty normal, and he gets his brothers and sisters to bed. But later that night, as he's laying in his bed, he begins to hear his brother's voice. And at first, he thought his brother was, up out of bed, like running around the house. But as he gets out of his bed, he starts to notice his brother's voice is coming from outside. And so he thinks, oh no, like my brother's gone outside. I need to get him inside because if my parents get home, they're going to be very mad. So he goes outside of the house, and when he goes out the back door, he starts hearing his brother's voice, and it's coming from the shed. So he goes over to the shed, and he starts yelling at his brother, like, you better get inside, you're going to get in trouble, like, don't make me come in there and get you. His brother doesn't respond. So once again, he says, you better get out of their shed, or you're going to be in big trouble. And once again, he doesn't respond. So he goes to the front of this shed, he opens the door, and he can see this figure over in the corner. It looks like his brother. So he walks inside, and he says very sternly to his brother, you better get inside now, or I'm going to have to bring you in myself. And the shadowy figure moves over towards him. And he says, brother, just patted him on the shoulder. And that's when he realized that that wasn't his brother. So he made his way out of the shed and he ran back inside. And he shut the door and he locked it. And he goes directly to his brother's room. And when he opens the door, he sees his brother is in bed, passed out. And that's when he starts hearing this banging coming from the back door. And at this point, he was terrified. And he starts hearing his brother's voice calling him from the back door to come outside. But when he looks, his brother is still in bed sleeping. This went on for several hours until his parents came home. His father searched the property. He couldn't find anything. And he penciled it into being just his imagination. Well, not too long after that, he said once again, one night he was asleep. And he woke up to the sound of commotion coming from the living room. So he got out of bed, went through the hallway, and he came into the living room. And he said that's when he seen his mom. She was sitting in a rocking chair, rocking back and forth. She was turned around to where he couldn't see her face. And when he looked over at the clock, he noticed it was 3:30 a.m. And when he looked back at his mom, she was knitting something. And he said that's when it occurred to him he just heard his mom snoring in the bedroom. So he turns around, he runs into her bedroom, and sure enough, there she is in bed. And when he wakes his parents and they go out there, there is no one there. But there is needles and a crocheted blanket sitting on the rocking.
Get ready with me while I tell you about this ghost story. So Evie is a paranormal podcast host who has to go home to take care of her mother who is dying, but my hair doesn't even want me to watch this. It's trying to choke me. That's enough. My God. Okay, Evie is this paranormal podcast host who goes home because she's taking care of her mother who is dying. She ends up getting these weird audio messages from a couple who is experiencing something supernatural. And eventually, after listening to these audios, the line between her reality and fear really start to get blurry. I am terrified. This almost hits a little too close to home. So of course I'm not gonna watch them alone. Of course I'm gonna have you guys watch with me. Of course. The movie is called Undertone and it is an A24 movie. Enough is said right there. And it comes out March 13th. Okay, let's just do it. Let's pull the Band-Aid off.
Do you hear something?
Stop. Nope. No.
Welcome to the Undertone Podcast, where we talk about all things creepy. I'm your in-house skeptic, Evie Babbage, and my believer co-host says he has a real treat for us today.
We're listening to 10 mysterious audio recordings from an anonymous email.
Oh my God. Are you implying there's hidden messages in it?
Let me play it back in reverse.
Play the next one. Let's find out.
What is that? Where is that coming from?
We should stop listening.
What is this? What if we unleash something?
What? Stop.
You shouldn't have called out to her. It's what she wants.
I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that I did that with y'all. But also I wasn't gonna do that alone, okay? Truth be told, when I got this email, like asking if I would want to see the trailer, I was kind of like, this almost hits a little too close to home and I'm not sure if I am comfortable with this. I couldn't even get fully ready while watching that because I paused. I had to pause the entire time. I could not focus on anything else. Are we watching this? I need to know. I need to know if we're going. I need to know if we're watching this.
In honor of International Women's History Month, I'm doing 31 Days of Women in Horror. Now let's talk about a modern horror powerhouse. Mia Goth is our rising scream princess. Although this was not her first movie, this was her entrance into the horror industry in A Cure for Wellness. In 2017, she played Jane Marrowbone in the movie Marrowbone, and she actually plays this with another one of our up and rising scream queens, Anya Taylor-Joy. Then the very next year, in 2018, she played in High Life. Also in 2018, she played in Suspiria. But 2022 is when she really exploded, because that's when she became Pearl. And the X trilogy was born, where she became Maxine Minx, where we follow Maxine Minx and Pearl across different timelines. I don't think there's any horror fan who has not seen the X trilogies. It's unhinged, emotional, and unforgettable. She is absolutely the next generation of horror royalty. Come back tomorrow for more of my 31 Days of Women in Horror in honor of International Women's Month.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of this man who used ants to get him money. So basically he was a ritualist. Other people use snakes, he uses ants. So how I got to have an encounter with this man was through his daughter. So there was a time where there were soccer matches at this other stadium that is in my neighborhood, right? And so me and my friend went there or whatever, and we were watching soccer, and my friend saw her other friends or whatever, and Lollipop, for story's sake, we're gonna call this girl Lollipop, this man's daughter. We met, my friend saw her other friend, for her friend there, and then we eventually all chilled as a group, because it was Lollipop, another girl, and my friend's friend, and then it was me and my friend, and then we all chilled together and we were talking. So obviously me and Lollipop clicked. You know, she was a cool girl, we were all talking, we were all taking pictures. Naturally we have to send each other these pictures, so Lollipop took my number as well, and then, you know, she posted the pictures, we were looking all cute, and then we started talking from there on, right? Lollipop would come and visit me from time, and I would go to her house. Now Lollipop grew up in the same neighborhood as us, but obviously her dad eventually things leveled up for him. You know, he leveled up and he got that money on, and they moved into the suburbs. That's how Lollipop has friends from the township, right? So she would come visit me or whatever, and I would go to her like place, and whoa, it was pretty, baby. The cars. The problem I had with Lollipop's Boise was that it had ants. Like, there were just ants everywhere. You get into this room, there's ants. It's not necessarily like there were a lot, but there were always ants. Like, you get into the toilet, and at the corner there's ants on the wall. You go into this room, there's ants on the wall. Like, it was just, I don't know, man. They had people like clean, and I was just like, this is kind of disgusting, you know? And so I would ask, like, Lollipop, like, why don't you guys, like, get, like, an exterminator to, you know, at this point, get an exterminator, because why are there so many ants, you know? And she was like, you know what, they've tried, you know, every time you spray these ants with doom, they like come back stronger, they come back and they are more. Like, you spray one with doom and then it comes back and it's 3. You spray that 3 with doom, it comes back and it's 50. Like, it just kept on accumulating. And I was like, that's crazy. So you guys just sleep with these ants? He's like, at night they're not there, they're here during the day, at night they're not there. I'm like, what? Hey, okay, cool. Maybe it's because, you know, during the day you guys are awake, you guys throw food. I don't know, because, you know, even in the bathroom, who eats in the bathroom? Like, what are ants doing in the bathroom? I don't get it, okay? And so Lollipop was like to me, my dad actually has a house in the township, right? It's the house that we used to live in. That house is infested with ants. And you know what's surprising now is the fact that it was just ants. No cockroaches, no bees, no nothing. Just ants. And she's like, that house is infested with ants. They've tried so many times to get rid of those ants so that they can sell that house. Nada, baby. And so you know, we finished that conversation. I go home, whatever, like after some time. And then she comes to my house this other time. She's like, yo, like, since we're bored, let's go to my dad's house. Let me show you just how crazy it is. So we get there, guys, nah? When we get there, so we open the gate, whatever, and it's a decent house. Behind the house is just trash. And then inside the house, we open the door, and inside the house has been trashed. I don't know why. You know, the cupboards are on the floor, the beds are turned upside down. You move a cupboard, there's ants. You open the fridge, there's ants. Naturally, inside a fridge that does not have any power, that's not on, you'd find cockroaches. But in that fridge was ants on ants on ants. You move the bed, it's ants. Oh my God, just thinking about it makes me want to throw up. Oh, like, it was just so much. And then I remember I had the nerve to go in the bedroom. That's how I saw the ants on the bed. And then we eventually just left, and she was just looking at me. She was like, that is disgusting, right? I'm like, yo, like, how do you guys live with these things? She's like, you know, we've gotten used to it. Like, this has been going on for so long. And I'm like, why don't you guys consult? And she just looked at me and she was like, hey, I don't know, bruh. Because I've told my mom, let's try that, because we've tried prayer, you know, and nothing is working. And my mom keeps on saying she'll deal with it, but really she's not dealing with it. So this one time, baby girl invites me for a sleepover. How? Okay, we're sleeping or whatever, and I have this dream where I am inside a room, right? A room with nothing, and I see an ant. I see an ant, guys. I spray and so this one time, baby girl invites me for a sleepover, and I'm like, alright, chilled, I'm gonna come, right? Okay, get to the sleepover, we eat with the family, you know, we're chilling, it's nice, we go to sleep. I have a dream, right? And in this dream, guys, I'm inside a room, right? And in this room, there is nothing but one ant that's moving around, that's like walking around the room, and there's a packet of like dooms. It's 6 dooms inside of that packet. Wow. So this ant is kind of like making me uncomfortable because I keep on trying to move it away from me and it keeps on coming from me, right? I take the doom and I spray the ant. I spray the ant, guys, and the ant comes back stronger with more ants. I keep on spraying, and it kept on accumulating until I was in the center of the room with one doom in my hand, and there were so many ants in that room. I got so scared. I woke up sweating. I woke up and my heart was thumping. And I'm just like, yo, guys. And I woke up, there were no ants in the house, obviously, because they said at night they are not there, but during the day they're there. So I wake up, guys. It's 4 a.m. When I tell you, when I woke up, I'm there trying to go get like water and you know get a charger, because the chargers that we were using were downstairs. We were in the levels. You know, this girl had like a nice house. It was upstairs, downstairs. You know the vibes, balcony. Hello, so guys. As I was going to get the charger, guys, it's 4 a.m. I don't know. So as I'm going to get the charger, guys, how Mr. and Mrs. Lollipop's mom and dad come inside the house, right? And I'm just like, yo, like, and they're coming back, and I look at them and I'm like, where do these people come from, you know? Because I didn't know that Mr. Lollipop's dad, you know, was a traditional healer. So I see them and they see me and I greet them and they ask me why am I up. I'm like, oh no, I was just scared. I had a nightmare. And they were like, what was the nightmare? And I was just like, in my head, I'm like, I don't want to say anything now because I see you guys, you know, and in my head, I'm thinking, no, they're going to want me to maybe cleanse or do something, because I mean, they're wearing traditional healer clothes. They must be traditional healers, right? Because what's the explanation for them dressing like that? I tell them, no, I had a nightmare where this person was chasing me. They're like, yo, you need to cancel that. They're telling me to pray. Mind you, they have buckets. Yo, just like, all right, bed, whatever. I went back upstairs, you know, charged my phone, and I was busy on it. I fell asleep eventually. I woke up, and then they told Lollipop and the brother, because Lollipop had an older brother, and they were like, oh, you know, yesterday we went to the river with so-and-so to try and deal with the ant problem, you know. And it's like, why didn't you guys tell us when we were leaving? So the brother was kind of confused, like, what? Since when do you guys follow that kind of tradition? You know, it was just giving awkward, sharp. How, guys? So next thing, these people are trying to act like my parents, you know, like I don't have parents or something. They like take me shopping. Sometimes they buy me stuff, you know, sometimes they fetch me from school, and it's me, Lollipop, and the brother, and we're going out. It's like, you know, they're playing family vibes, and it was cool, because I thought maybe I have a second family. Why not? They have money. Sometimes they give me money, you know, all of that good stuff. One day, the mom decides to take Lollipop and I shopping, right? She buys us clothes and she tells us we're going on a trip. We're like, what? Yes! We're going for the weekend. Hausana, it's me, Lollipop, and Lollipop's brother and his 2 friends, right? How we get there? As soon as we get there, guys, mind you, we were planning to do a lot of stuff. As soon as we get there, people start saying they're tired and they go to sleep. Another red flag is they refuse for us to sleep in the same rooms for cleaning reasons. They said that if one gets dirty, the other one one, we are going to quarrel and say it's the other one when it's the other one. It just didn't make sense, guys. Shapo, everybody is tired, they go to sleep, and they ask me, aren't I tired? I'm like, no, yabo. So I eventually just be like, yeah, I'm also tired. I go to sleep, guys, and I hear things outside like drums, and I peek outside. It's Lollipop's mom and dad. They're playing drums outside of my room. Next thing, it's a lot of smoke and I'm coughing, right? So I act like I'm sleeping because Lollipop's dad entered my room and they started spraying things in my room. I'm just like, yo. Started spraying things in my room. We woke up the next day, guys. I acted like I didn't hear anything, but the smoke, you could smell the smoke in my room. Sharpo, the weekend went on. They did that on that particular Friday. When I got home, guys, I told my mom, and my mom took me to a person, and that person told me that Lollipop's mom and dad realized that I had caught onto what they were doing, that obviously they were using these ants to get money and all of that, so they wanted to make me forget, like they wanted me to become their minion, like, work for them since I have so much power and I saw through them, so they wanted to use my power to generate more money. And I was just like, yo, what? Dang.
It seems like no one ever wants to talk about how many bodies are out in Ocala National Forest. There are two that we know pretty much for sure, Nancy Leichner and Pamela Nader, who disappeared while they were on a scuba trip with their boyfriends at Alexander Springs. It's believed they were among the first victims of Gerard Schaefer, and he took credit for their murders but never said where their bodies were. And the more I've looked into their case, the more I believe they never left that forest. I don't think Gerard Schaefer took them anywhere, because if he had, he would have left them tied up to trees and easy to find like his other victims. They would have been found by now. I think he took them deep into the forest and did what monsters do to those two poor girls. And he either buried them under a tree, which was his MO, or he buried them somewhere else in the forest where they will probably never be found. And there are other people who have vanished in Ocala National Forest, and I have heard from a lot of locals that they believe there are certain areas of that forest that are like a graveyard. And people know about these areas but don't really talk about it because, supposedly, allegedly, for educational purposes only, the police department is somehow involved. Or at least knew about it and was covering it up. And honestly, it doesn't surprise me. Nothing really surprises me when it comes to Ocala National Forest because I have heard so many stories. My inbox is absolutely filled with people telling me their stories about Ocala National Forest and telling me things that they say nobody else would ever believe. So with all of that considered, of course it's haunted. Of course there's a lot of paranormal activity there if so many bodies are buried in the forest. That's not even touching on the lynchings that have taken place there, the KKK activity that's taken place there. It's been a hunting ground for serial killers, at least 3 that we know of. Ocala National Forest is absolutely beautiful and deserves to be protected and respected, but there is some scary shit that goes on there, and a huge part of me really wants to get to the bottom of some of it. Maybe I'll take a little drive soon.
I've been married for just over 2 years now, and I have never ever known peace in my home, in my matrimonial home. Story time. So I've been married just over 2 years now. We live in the same house with, my husband, his family. I'm talking about mother, father, brothers, sisters. So you can imagine how busy, how chaotic this is. I'm having to do everything. I do not complain. But life has been so hell and miserable for these over 2 years living in that family home. Eventually, my husband saw what I was telling him. So he decided to rent a place for just us, myself and him, to go and live. We move over there. I was finally happy. I've regained my happiness. My life, my marriage life can now go on smoothly without any interferences, without anyone on my case. Anyway, I went to work, and then anytime I come back, the whole place will be messed up. I'm talking about like someone has been in there searching for something in our belongings. Then it moved on to a lot of my kitchen utensils going missing, stuff being moved around. At first, I thought I was just being confused or something. But then this carried on for a long time, and it's just myself and husband who live together. So one day I came home very early because I wasn't feeling well. I had this bad migraine. When I got to my house, I could hear some rustling sounds coming from our house. I'm wondering, is it my husband that has come home, but his car wasn't there? So I'm thinking, is it a thief or what? I don't even know at this point. Anyway, I mustered the courage to open the door and go inside and see who it is. Tell me why my mother-in-law is going through my stuff. I did not know what is going on here. Anyway, she left. My husband got back home and I told him, I said, what is going on? He said he gave his mother the spare key. Why on earth are you giving your mother the spare key? Isn't the reason why we moved out from your family home is for the happiness, for the peace? So why are you giving your mother the spare keys without even telling me? Now, she's telling me that she can come and go as she pleases. I said that's never going to happen. Apparently, I'm the disrespectful daughter-in-law. I'm a daughter-in-law that no household should ever have. Do you guys think that is true? Please comment in the comment section below.
On March 8th, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 with 239 people on board disappeared from the radar. There are 1.5 million theories and what ifs when it comes to what happened here, but the thing is that one of those crazy theories could be right. One of those crazy theories probably is right. The date is March 7th, 2014, around 11 p.m. Passengers are arriving at the Kuala Lumpur airport to take a red-eye to Beijing. Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 was going to take off around midnight carrying 239 people on board, and it was going to fly through the night. It should have been a routine flight of about 5.5 to 6 hours. And that airplane itself had a pretty solid safety record. It had logged thousands of flights and it was built to carry 282 passengers at full capacity, so more than they had on that night. 2 weeks before the incident, a full aircraft maintenance check was done and all looked good. The night of the flight, it also went through its routine maintenance checks to prep. The pilot flying the plane was one of Malaysia's airline's most experienced pilots, having 33 years of service, and sitting beside him was a young pilot, 27 years old, with a promising career ahead of him. The cabin crew of 10 members was supervised by Patrick Gomes, who had worked for the Malaysia Airlines for 35 years. And then you had the 227 passengers from 15 different nations, from China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia, India, United States, France, Canada, so many different places. At 12:41 a.m. on March 8th, the plane drove off from the gate and lifted into the night sky. The flight plan again was pretty straightforward. They would be flying over the South China Sea, across Vietnam and into Chinese airspace, and scheduled to land at 6:30 in the morning, Beijing time. Weather conditions were normal as the plane flew to an altitude of 35,000 feet and everything was normal for about 30 minutes. So you guys know air traffic controllers. They're the people who sit in the towers and or control rooms and use radar to guide planes safely through the sky, telling pilots when to take off, when to land, and when to change altitudes to avoid collisions. And they cover specific areas on a map. So around 1:07 a.m., the flight was about to leave Malaysian airspace, so they were transferring to a different set of air traffic controllers. At 1:19 a.m., the pilot gets on the radio as they're exiting Malaysian airspace and in the most normal, calm, routine voice says, "Good night, Malaysian 370. That would be the last communication anyone would hear from Flight 370. The plane was supposed to check in with a new set of air traffic controllers within minutes. That call never came. 2 minutes after, at 1:21 in the morning, the plane's transponder, which is what shows up on an air traffic control radar, stopped broadcasting, meaning that Flight 370 disappeared from the radar screens. And the air traffic control teams are like, "Can you see them? We can't see them. No, we can't see them on our map. Can you see them? No, we can't either." The transponder disappearing would have been a result of either it malfunctioning on the plane for whatever reason or someone manually turning it off. Nobody could see the plane's location, nor could they make contact with the plane. 6:30 a.m. comes around. The plane should have landed. It hadn't landed. So the flight was now officially considered missing, which is incredibly concerning, but not as bad as it could have been yet, because the plane itself had enough fuel to last it until around 8:30 a.m. Crisis management teams were notified, search and rescue add-on C was sent out, and that was the beginning of a mystery and the most expensive search effort in aviation history. Meanwhile, you have people online and on the media trying to figure out what has happened. Families have no clue where their loved ones are. Nobody knew a thing. And then 8:30 a.m. came and went, and the plane was still nowhere to be found. But then we learned that the flight disappeared from civilian radar screens, not from the military radar in the region. Malaysian military radar detected an unidentified aircraft, which was assumed to be Flight 370, making a sharp turn back toward the way that they came from. So right after the pilot gave that last call, the radar showed that the plane turns back over the South China Sea, crossed the Malay Peninsula, changed altitude, descending to approximately 12,000 feet at one point, headed toward the Strait of Malacca, flew along the border between Thai and Malaysian airspace, which would have seemingly followed a path designed to avoid radar detection, and then it was detected crossing into the Andaman Sea. Whatever happened on that plane signaled that someone with knowledge of aviation, flight paths, and planes had deliberately turned the plane around, switched off its communication systems, and flown it along a path that suggested an attempt to avoid detection. Now, we talked about the transponder. Well, apart from that, there is also an aircraft satellite data unit, SDU. An SDU is a piece of equipment on a plane that connects to communication satellites, allowing the aircraft to send and receive messages when they're flying over oceans or remote areas where there are no ground-based radio towers. So even with the transponder off, flight MH370 continued to leave a very small electronic trail, and that showed that the plane's SDU had lost power sometime between 1:07 and 2:03 in the morning. Then at 2:25 a.m., 3 minutes after they had flown beyond the range of military radar, the SDU logged back on, and for the next 6 hours, it kept pinging on different satellites. But it wasn't sending any messages. Kind of think of it like a cell phone. It wasn't sending text messages, but it would be the equivalent of, like, say, a phone looking for signal. So each pin contained critical data, and the last one was sent out at 8:19 in the morning, nearly 7 hours after the last voice contact, and almost an hour after Malaysian Airlines had publicly announced that the plane was missing. The last ping showed that the plane had flown into the southern Indian Ocean, approximately 1,100 miles away from Perth, Western Australia. Because of that, Australia then assumed their responsibility for the search. Analysis suggested that the plane had run out of fuel and had very likely crashed somewhere in the area. On March 24th, 2014, the Malaysian Prime Minister held a press conference and announced, quote, Flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean. He also said that the mission had changed from a search and rescue to more of a search and recovery. All 239 people on board were presumed gone. For days, ships and aircrafts from Malaysia, Vietnam, China, and other nations searched the wrong area of the Indian Ocean. They were searching deep in the ocean using things such as scanners, echo sounders, and video cameras, and they would search up to 46,000 miles of seafloor in waters up to 2.5 miles deep. They searched through one of the most remote parts of the planet while being exposed to brutal weather conditions. But signs of the actual wreckage site would be found 16 months later, thousands of miles away. On July 29th of 2015, a cleanup crew found a flaperin that had washed up on an island, a French territory in the Indian Ocean east of Madagascar. A flaperin is a 6-foot-long piece of the airplane's wing that helps control the plane during takeoff and landing. It was later confirmed through serial numbers to be that of MH370's right wing, making it the first physical proof that the plane had crashed in the Indian Ocean. By October of 2017, around 40 pieces total had been recovered, with at least 18 of them identified as, quote, very likely or almost certain to be from MH370. But all the parts found had been wing parts, panels, and fragments. No major wreckage like the engines have ever been found, which is why the main crash site remains uncertain. And without any of those big parts, it's pretty much impossible to figure out why the plane crashed. After searching 12,000 square kilometers of ocean floor without finding any wreckage, the governments of Malaysia, Australia, and China suspended the search. The operation had cost the US $155 million. Australia, Malaysia, and China all paid a certain percentage of that. Point being, it was the most expensive search in aviation history, and it found nothing. I was debating on whether I should include theories on this case or not, but I kind of want to leave the conversation up to you guys because I know so many of you guys have so much to say about this case. So I'm going to leave it there. I kind of want this comment section on this video to be like a discussion board because I genuinely am so curious to see what your opinions are on this. So that's it for me. I will see you in the comments. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the foreheads, every single one of you. 3 kisses. I'm feeling crazy.